Well, first of all, nice to see everyone here. I hope you had a bit of breakfast. I think we have a pretty exciting agenda. Um, our kickoff speaker today, his headline is Canada, or one of the largest landowners in Canada, private landowners. But I think he's got a lot more insight and interest. Here's someone that doesn't come to us with a PhD. It's someone who comes to us with a bit of dirt under his fingers, who's worked hard over the years, but also has studied the big picture, the cycles that affect farming and the economy, and also how he's, through that, how he's made decisions around farming and land ownership. I'd like you to all help me welcome Robert Andjelic. And Robert, it's great that you agreed to come out here and spend some time. And I think you'll be around for a bit later so people can have a chance to chat. We'll have a few questions at the end. Our process here is basically I'm going to ask Robert a few questions, and from there try and hold him back so that he doesn't keep running. So, Robert, probably the best way is a little bit of an introduction. How did you get to Calgary, Alberta, and a landowner? What's the little story that gets you to where we are today?
Well, I'd like to, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for the invite. And then I'd like to say that what I'm going to discuss is points I've actually incorporated throughout my business life. And also a word of warning that this is for educational purposes only. Okay, I'd like to start by saying we came to Canada in 1958. That came with, I think it was $32. From there, we started in house renovations and alterations, and kept on moving around. Everything lived in the house while we were renovating it. And then we moved on to masonry business, doing house fronts and so on, and then eventually into construction. And from construction, we moved into warehouse offices on a small scale. And eventually Dad and I split up, and I went into commercial real estate on my own. That lasted till about 2005-06. I foreseen the subprime issue ready to hit the fan. Then I put the entire portfolio up for sale. The intent was to sell it before like I said, before the issue really becomes serious and the market takes a serious drop, and then buy back. So I did sell in 2007, and then since I had a non-compete clause, I had to go elsewhere. I moved to Alberta because I had a non-compete clause in Manitoba. And the idea was to wait it out, let the recession take its toll, and then buy back into commercial real estate. As it turns out, they did a number of maneuvers and so on. Hank Paulson saved the day through the banking crisis, and that meant that the portfolio didn't, or the commercial real estate didn't go down as much as I anticipated. It went down 20-30%, but not the 40-50 that I anticipated. In between, I started playing the commodities market, and I was heavily invested in that. all commodities, soft and hard commodities. Eventually getting into the rare earth metals. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them, but rare earth metals, China controls about 98% of the world's rare earth metals. And rare earth metals are in all our green projects. You can't do very much without them, including the EVs and everything, actually. But then when I found out that the U.S. government, the security depends on them because it goes into smart bombs too, then I figured since China controls so much that the U.S. would have to make a play for it and buy into it big time. And I got into the market. It wasn't available open in North America, so I had to go into the Australian market. That did really well. Of course, eventually the U.S. did come in and bought me out, and then I thought of what is the best investment that I can go into that China, India, South Korea, or whichever country wins the economic race, manufacturing race included, what do they need and that Canada has? Of course, the answer would be agriculture and water. So that's how I got into farmland eventually.
Well, Robert, it doesn't sound like it was totally luck that you decided to move out of one sector, looking at probably the economy. Give us a little bit of insight, what you studied to kind of understand why you would move from one sector to another. That Canada has water and land, I think everybody knows that. Not everybody capitalizes on that.
Well, first of all, I did study agriculture for some time, even when I was in commercial real estate. At that time, agriculture was being heavily subsidized by most countries in the world, so it wasn't really a level playing field. But seeing the deficits that the countries are running and the problems that I foresee coming, more than likely most countries are going to have to cut back seriously on their subsidies. So can you ask the question again?
So that's kind of why you probably ended up in land. But what were some of the economic indicators or cycles that you looked at to make the move?
The other aspects that were clear to me is mostly environmental, the climate change. Okay, climate change will limit most countries from getting top yields or yields that they were used to. As a matter of fact, something like United States showed me that, going 15 years back research, that half of United States will be out of commission as far as agriculture production is concerned, going back, let's say, 20, 30 years back. They're running out of water. The Colorado River is almost dry for them. Their aquifers are being depleted. And at one point, I talked to some of the producers out there. They used to do 200-300-foot wells, like in California, and now they're in the 1,500 to 2,000-foot wells. And those aquifers took, thousands of years to fill. They won't fill with one good heavy rain or flood, even for that matter. And then when you look at the geopolitical issues, I didn't foresee Ukraine, but you do allow for them in some fashion. And then when you take all that into consideration, I don't think the world is going to be able to produce what it used to produce, and the less production there is, of course, that's what will govern our prices, supply and demand issue.
Well, thanks, Robert. So, looking at demand, looking at Canada's resources, our land base, the changes in governments, less subsidies are forcing less subsidies. So, ideally, more trade, kind of led you to the ag sector. Your move into land, do you see that as farming or as investment?
Well, actually both, because we're partners with the producers and we want what's best for the land. So it is also definitely an investment. At one point, we were clear title, like when I first started, when I transferred over and started buying land, it was all clear title. And then I looked at most countries running huge deficits and so on. So it's to their interest to keep inflation high. So when they run that deficit, they will be paying you back 20, 30 years later. They'll pay you back 50 cents on the dollar. And then I got out of the clear title and put a big mortgage on it as much as I could, and bought land with it. When I started buying land back in 12, 13 years ago, 2010 actually, I was buying at $500-600 an acre. And most of my portfolio was built within that time frame, within 5 years. I bought over around 100,000 acres by then.
So you've talked about how you're partners with the people that rent from you, the family farms and the farmers. How do you see that relationship? How do you treat them? What are some of the keys that you look for in renters and that renters are looking for, seeing you as a preferable landlord?
Well, we both we need to have like-minded individuals as tenants. By that I mean they have to do what's best for the land and return the nutrients back. They can't mine the land. They need people that'll farm the land and properly done properly. On the other hand, we do a lot of clearing out east around Yorkton and so on. There's a lot of bush, a lot of rock piles, fence rows, and so on. So we remove everything, and we make it as efficient as we can for the 100-foot cedars and so on. At one time, I used to work for the producers when the cedars were 10, 12 feet wide. But when you're talking 100-foot cedars, no, they can't make it around those. And the overlap is huge. So we clear it, and the most efficient we can make is 1 mile by 1 mile. I got some data back where a producer rents from us, where we cleared and everything, and it works at it's 640 acres, I think around 620 is cultivated. On the neighbors, on the another investor's field that he rents, that's because it's right next to ours, no improvements were done. So on that one, he left his sectional control off on the tractor, and the tractor counted 805 acres because, of course, it counted everything, the overlap and all. And the actual count on the cedar that he had the sectional control on was only 455 acres. So that tells you the efficiency that we get. Now the left and the environmentalists, they don't like the bush removal and so on. They say, oh, you're destroying habitat. Well, not really. It's 5 acres. You remove that five, and they say, well, you're trying to put everything into production. That's not the point. I can buy the 5 acres a lot easier and a lot cheaper than by the time I finish clearing it and putting it into production. The thing is, if I buy land a quarter section 20 miles away, that decreases the producer's efficiency. And the other thing is, when you count the overlap there, you're almost doing twice as much. You're wasting, you're putting that much more carbon dioxide into the air. That's another thing they don't want to recognize. And I tried on quite a few interviews, I tried to tell them that, but they don't care about that. But it is a fact. You do reduce your carbon footprint, and you can almost increase your efficiency by 100%. We won't say 100%, but anywhere from 50 to 90, let's say.
Robert, you told me you were involved in southwestern Saskatchewan a number of years ago. Took a look at a few factors, including some solar cycles and whatnot, and actually made a capital decision on that based on some of your studies. Tell us a little bit about both what your research was and your thinking into making those kind of moves.
I do a lot of research on solar cycles and then into the Gleisberg cycle. They're all associated with climate change. Now, we can argue till doomsday about who's guilty, whether the general public is guilty of certain, I'm sure they contribute, but it's not the sole reason. Solar cycles is every 11 years, the sun reverses its north pole, becomes the south pole. So that's every 11 years. And then there's 8 solar cycles within the Gleisberg cycle. Gleisberg cycle is something that happens every anywhere 80 to 100 years. It's a kind of a long span in between. But the bottom line is the last peak of the Gleisberg cycle was in the dirty 30s. So I seen that coming. And about 10 years ago or 9 years ago, I sold, I had a whole bunch of land, about 25,000 acres in the southwest Saskatchewan. I sold that and anticipating droughts and so on, and then bought out by Yorkton, Melville area. That area has been very good to us. We've had 50, 60 bushel canola crops for the past, I don't know, 5 years or more. Not all in that, but anywhere from 40 to 60 bushel. So it worked out very well. But again, it's starting the cycles, and the Gleisberg cycle is peaking right now. And we may have another 4 or 5 years to go yet, because it has a long lifespan, and it is, it's not very predictable, but the fact is that there's a lot more solar activity and causes the droughts and so on.
So so it's not just land and location, but also climate and its impact. And if you're ever talking to a farmer, weather always comes up. So we always whether it's too wet, too dry, too cold, too hot, all of those things become issues. You focused on Saskatchewan. Why Saskatchewan? Why not Iowa, Nebraska, South America? What was about Saskatchewan farmland and opportunities that helped to motivate you to really focus your attention and your resources in that area?
Well, when I looked at the land prices in Manitoba, original, of course, I'm from Winnipeg, so I looked at Manitoba first. I looked at Manitoba. Saskatchewan and Alberta. At that time, Manitoba was at least 2 times higher priced. I'm talking equal production land, 50 bushel per acre, let's say. In Manitoba, 50, in Saskatchewan, 50, in Alberta, should be similar price land. But Manitoba was twice as much, and Alberta was 3-4 times as much per acre. So, of course, I chose Saskatchewan, and I did it fairly quickly because the old Saskatchewan the policy was that you had to be a Saskatchewan resident to own Saskatchewan farmland, and that kept capital from coming in and pushing the prices up. Of course, every producer knew that unless he bought it, there's really nobody else going to compete against him. Against if neighbor's land comes up for sale. So that kept the prices low, and again, I rushed it fairly quickly. In 5 years' time, I acquired about 160 or 80 acres, 1,000 acres, which was making an offer virtually every day of the week, including Sundays and New Year's Day and Christmas. So needless to say, the realtors, although they were more than happy, but some of them weren't that happy on Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, drawing up an offer.
And maybe some of your family members weren't so pleased with you being gone all the time.
Well, actually, everything was done out of home. So I, with this DocuSign and everything else, you don't even have to go. I don't think I visited with my lawyer or my accountant in years, like in person.
Sounds good. What do you see as some of the challenges for broad scale agriculture in the prairies over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, that's an interesting subject and very broad subject. You're talking now geopolitical issues, interest rates. You're talking all kinds of different aspects. And when you look at Ukraine, for example, being out of commission almost as far as food production is concerned, with 65% of their fields being mined. And then the other thing is climate change and how it's going to affect other producers. I don't do forecasts like short-term prices of canola or whatever product, but long-term I'm very optimistic in the fact that I feel that the demand is going to outstrip the supply. And of course, you know what that means, higher prices.
And opportunities.
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges? Like we see tractor protests in Europe. We see carbon taxes here in Canada. Other challenges. How do you see some of these larger policy-based or politically based challenges? How do you see those facing both your investment and the producers that you work with? How do you see that affecting them over time?
Well, governments are involved more and more through that ESG standards. And when I talk to the bankers, the head bankers, let's say in Toronto, who a lot of them, I've known them from the time they started in Winnipeg. We used to deal with them on the commercial real estate side, and they've progressed through the ranks and are quite high up in the decision-making process, let's say in Toronto. And they tell me what's coming down as far as the ESG standards. There will be certain standards that you will have to meet. And that'll be implemented, they'll be actually tied to loans. You won't be able to get the loans without them ticking off those little boxes. And that's how it's going to start. and later on it'll get worse. Just like when I first started in commercial real estate, it used to be the environmental phase one. And then it built on. We were amongst the first to implement it in our commercial real estate side, but then it became mandatory. Now you can't do a deal without it. So similar things will occur with farmland and as far as production is concerned on the producer side. It's already being implemented in buildings, commercial real estate buildings, in that they want certain standards, R factors in the walls and everything else, and before they'll give you a loan.
And what about if you're investing in farmland or farming, credit availability, and the cost of credit? That's changed over time. We've just come through 10 years of some of the lowest real interest rates, come up a bit in the last couple years. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, the interest rates, of course, were very low, and actually on that point, I've been talking to my tenants for quite some time, because it used to be the floating rate was the rate to go with, because interest rates were coming down all the time for the past, 20 years, I guess. Just the last 3-4 years, I started to tell my tenants, or didn't tell them, I just suggested that they look at locking in 5-year and 10-year rates if possible. So a lot of them that did that send me thank you notes now, because the 7% interest rate doesn't affect them any. They locked in, I know a lot of them locked in at 10%, something like 3.5%. Sorry, they locked in for 10-year at 3.5%. So it doesn't matter to them. They're laughing around. Like I said, they send me thank you notes instead. But as far as interest rates going forward are concerned, there's a lag effect. Like when Powell started increasing, Powell, the Fed chair, U.S., when he started increasing interest rates about 2 years ago, there's a lag effect anywhere from 6 months to a year and a half before those filter through the economy and it's actually felt in the economy. Some of the industries such as housing and so on, it's going to be almost immediate, because when you build a new house and you want to finance it, you'll finance it at today's rate. But something like commercial real estate, let's say the mortgage is 5-year term, it'll take time, like when do those mortgages expire, and that they actually have to lock in at the high rate. And that's happening every year. It gets worse and worse as you go, and more are dragged into it. By the way, if anybody's in commercial real estate, I used to be in it. I understand it very well. Made a lot of money at it. But today it's a basket case. It's in for a bloodbath. It'll be one of, and the one that'll most likely trigger the landslide is the Chinese commercial real estate. They're Evergrande, the largest commercial real estate company. They, I think, filed for bankruptcy or are in bankruptcy. Their second largest, Country Garden, is next, and so on down the road. But there will be contagion effect from that, along with the U.S. commercial real estate. Now, how is that going to affect farmland and producers and so on? Because the bankers and the lenders, they have a knee-jerk reaction to that. And they will need more equity by you, but agriculture still the best investment of all of them. every time I go to Toronto, I talk about that to the bankers. And for the past 5 years, I've been telling them this is all coming. I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it is, but I knew there was too much money into it because people didn't have many alternatives but to invest in high-yielding corporation REITs and so on. And so that was the big balloon there, ready to burst, which it will be. My guess is 24, 25 will be the years now.
So that big debt balloon, both corporately but also at the national level, Canada, U.S., and other places, you see that as having a potential on either access to capital for producers or to debt?
Well, it'll definitely affect everybody, okay? But just to what level? And I'd say agriculture will be affected the least because, like I said, I spent a lot of time, 10 years, talking to the bankers and educating them about agriculture and so on. And a lot of them now are trying to participate more in ag lending.
So when it comes to making land investment decisions, certainly right now there's some pretty high prices in the land business in this area. I think most of North America prices are probably at some of their peaks. How does an investor like yourself look at getting a return on investment? How do you look at that? Do you need to get a return today? What sized return do you have to shoot for? Because I can put my $100 in the bank and get 5% without any risk right now. Not sure I can do that on land. What do you think?
Well, that's one thing I constantly I'm up against when I talk to the bankers in Toronto and anywhere. That capitalization, in other words, rate of return, is far lower on farmland than it is on other commercial real estate. Throughout my business life, like in commercial real estate, I worked with cap rates of anywhere 12% up to 20, 30%. Farmland is, I think today, if you try to buy around your area here, $5,000-$6,000 per acre. If you're laughing there, most likely it's a lot higher.
Irrigation's a lot higher.
Oh, irrigation.
Dry land
I'm
might
talking
be.
dry land.
Yeah, dry land might be in that
Yeah.
area.
Okay. So if you look at that, I think you'd be hard pressed to get. You're at 1%, 2% cap rate, but you have to account for appreciation, but then you realize that only when you sell, of course.
So I've seen you talk about when you make an investment into land that you don't necessarily expect an immediate return. How have you thought over that, and how has that turned out for you over time?
Well, the initial investment, when you invest in, doesn't matter whether it's farmland or commercial real estate or whatever. When I used to build a new building, let's say in commercial real estate, it would take me 3 to 5 years before it starts cash flowing, in other words, making a return. Because you'd build it at that time, we were building between, let's say it's $60 a square foot, but the rates were $4 rental rates. But the cost was higher, so then what you have a lower return cap rate for 3 to 5 years, and that's the same in farmland. They always lag the rental market. In rentals, like as an investor, I can only make a cap rate of whatever the rent is. So if I pay 4,000 per acre, my let's say a cap rate is 3%, 3 times 4, $120 rent. That'll cash flow. That's all I get. Producer beats me out every time because he can make $200, $300 per acre profit. Not always, but a lot of times. So he can pay more for that land than I can. So that's lately, like, they've been outbidding me quite a bit because my rate is based on the rental rate.
I seen an Iowa banker who said for the last 39 years he's been advising his farmers not to get too risky and buy land. And he says, I've been wrong for 39 years. I'm not sure if I'm going to be wrong this year as well. What's your thinking? Are you I'm sure you won't give us your internal discussions, but are you buying land at today's prices, or are you giving it a rest?
Yes, I'm buying, but very selectively, mostly because of the 7% interest rate. I buy only if land is adjacent to my other holdings, or if I own, let's say, 3/4, and then a quarter section comes up within that section, then I buy that. But I'm not going out and buying land that right now in Saskatchewan it's $3,500, $4,000 per acre. And by the way, if you compare rental rates to purchase, let's say take that $4,008 per acre. At $4,000 per acre, if you were paying 7%, 7 plus 4, 28, you'll be paying an equivalent of $280 per acre. You can rent that same land from us at $120. And a lot of producers, they don't put that in perspective. Like quite often I get asked a question, okay, I'm sitting on some cash, let's say a producer, a tenant of mine sitting on some cash, he comes to me, well, what should I do? Should I buy land or what? I say, look at your inputs. Do you pay your inputs, or do you have the cash to pay next year's inputs? Then if you do that, you're not going to have a gun held to your head to sell in December, possibly into the wrong market. December, January, to pay for the last year's inputs. You can ride it out and wait for the right price.
So there's a number of students here as well. So we've got people that towards the end of their career in agriculture, in the middle, and coming up. If you were looking to advise producers that are trying to make a career in agriculture, where should their focus be? Should it be in acquiring land, running the farm business, or some combination of the two?
Well, as you all know in this room, agriculture is a very capital-intensive business. It's really not that much different from my past business, commercial real estate. So starting out, I've had some South Africans that were employed by some of my big tenants. The way we got them started was I gave them 1 year's rent-free, and then they'd use the equipment of the guy they were working for to seed and so on. So he built some cash and so on, and then eventually he bought some of his own land. But that's a long, drawn-out process, and it is a very capital-intensive. Yeah, land isn't the only thing. Look at your inputs. Look at your equipment costs. Every piece of equipment, the new equipment, is $1 million or so. Okay, so that equipment will do large amounts, like 7 to 10,000 acres per year. Depends if you run around the clock. But it is a very large capital intensive business.
But there's still opportunities out there.
Oh, yes, there is. I have no doubt. But like I said, down the road, I foresee that demand outstripping the supply, and that leaves you in the driver's seat, which the producers weren't in very often. Most of the time, they were price takers, not price makers.
The if you look at the demographics of the farm sector right now, I think FCC had a recent session around here. They talked about the amount of farmland that's got to move either between generations or to outside investors over the next 10 years. A fairly significant number of farmers in their middle 60s to their late 70s that are probably looking at. How do you see that opportunity and impact both on farmland prices and on farmland or farm opportunities?
Well, a lot of that land, when the producer retires, goes on the market and leased. I think something like 45% of the land is leased land. Out of that 45%, most of that again is producers that retired or their extended families that are leasing that land back. The investors, I think, make up only about 2.5–3% max as percentage owners of farmland. So it's a very, very small percentage. So now getting back to you, as far as the availability and so on is concerned, with the equipment being able to do more and the producers getting larger and larger. A lot of my producers are anywhere in the 5 to 100,000 square foot, not square foot, acres range. I get confused with the commercial real estate talk.
Prices are almost the same per square foot, aren't they?
Well, surprisingly, yes. Like when I said when I stopped building, you talk about inflation and so on. When I stopped building, it was $60 to $80 a square foot. Today, it's $250. So it's no different with land.
So the opportunities over the next number of years that you've seen, where do you see your entity in operation over the next 10 years?
Well, actually, with climate change and everything, we looked at Australia now, mostly because of logistics. Like if you look at your Red Sea and the shipping and how it has to be diverted and so on, you're looking at adding, with that closed or not used, you're looking at adding between 10 days to 2 weeks in time, and that it disrupts the supply chain, of course. And then you're looking at minimum twice the cost. If you look at Australia, they can just go straight north. So we're looking at Australia farmland. We're looking at South America. Climate change again. If you look at your, let's say, coffee production, it's at a certain level. It requires certain type of climate, certain type of nights, and so on. It's moving. Like we're looking at buying higher up the mountain to where the production is going to, and the yields will be better, and the crop quality will be better.
So some people have said that northern Canada, Russia could be winners in the climate change scenarios that some of the models are showing. Does that send you further north at all, or what's your thinking?
Yes, I've identified that some years back, and I started buying around Prince Albert area and so on up there. But the only thing is up there's not as many progressive producers. There are some now moving in. But as far as climate change is concerned, yes, Canada is deemed to be one of the beneficiaries of it, and there are very few, actually. Canada, Russia, of course, and so on. The only thing you have to look at where I differ from the people that do these numbers, and they say you can double almost land, and I don't agree with that. Because what you have, like look at Ontario, yes, they may get higher heat units further north, but what is up there? The Canadian Shield. You're not going to grow very much there. And then if you look at Manitoba, you have the boreal forest, and you have the pH negative, about 3.5 to 4, the pH. And that's really low, like bog and so on. And then it starts in Saskatchewan will benefit, yes, most likely the most. Along with northern Alberta.
So my quick last question to you is, how would I be, what do I have to do as a farmer to be an attractive renter on your operations?
Well, you have to cash flow properly, good capitalized. You have to use we like the ones that have the equipment that is conducive to and complements the ESG standards, section control and all the rest. And then the other thing, be good for the land and return to the land.
Well, and that seems appropriate for any producer wherever they are. And just one comment, you talked about land and water. I know Manulife and some other investors are looking in parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan for access to water for their land. How do you see that? Should we be developing more water sources for agriculture production? Is it worth the cost? And are you actually serious about getting involved in some irrigated agriculture in Saskatchewan?
Well, we do have irrigated land already. Out of the 232,808 acres, we have only about 20,000 irrigated. But we are looking, I think that's where the future is, no ifs and buts. Because the other thing you have to look at, producers such as California, let's say take their alfalfa pelleting and so on, and that they ship to Japan and all out east. They're limited. A lot of those are being closed. They don't have the water. Their almond trees are being bulldozed. Again, a water problem. So they are in effect opening up markets for us. That a market exists, but the product doesn't exist anymore because California can't grow that alfalfa anymore. In effect, what you're doing when you're exporting alfalfa, you're exporting water.
Yep. Good. Robert's agreed to take a few questions if anybody has some questions. We do have a few minutes. Do we have a floating mic? We do. So is there anybody that's got a question for Robert? I see a question over here.
Hi, Robert. My name's Andre. When you're talking about there's going to be a bloodbath in the commercial marketing and stuff. Right now, we're seeing a tremendous amount of money going into the grain markets from funds and stuff in the speculative game. Do you think this is going to get worse? And this, you're talking about grain prices look like they're going to go up, but do you think that with some of this money transferring into the grain markets, is that going to keep our prices down? How do you see that picture playing out?
Well, what I was referring to, like commercial real estate, yes, it will be a bloodbath. Okay, now that money will look to go elsewhere. Agriculture is definitely one. I get calls from all over the world, doesn't matter, like Israel, Germany, US, and wanting to invest into agriculture. Now, they haven't done their homework, a lot of them, in that they don't know that our Farmland Ownership Act, where you have to be a Canadian citizen to invest in that. But money is looking to come in. Farmland correlates very close to gold in downturns, whether it be recessions, inflation, even deflation. So the two best investments that I can say going forward, in my view, are farmland and gold. I'm not in gold at all because I think farmland is even a better investment in that it has a cash flow. Gold just sits there.
Okay, we have one more question here. I've also had one or two questions on whatever this is called, Slido, I guess. So we'll have this question here, and then I'll ask that question yet.
Hi, I'm Heather Cameron from Alberta Newspaper Group. What are your thoughts on the current water situation, the water crisis that we're facing right now, and how it's affecting the growth seasons?
Well, like Gleisberg cycles, and if you study those cycles, they kind of told you that western Saskatchewan and Alberta, part of the Palisade Triangle, they're going to be in difficulty. So it's really not a surprise to me because, like I said, I sold 25,000 acres in southwest Saskatchewan and moved it into the eastern Saskatchewan side where we got the rains and we got the yields. So going forward, I think it'll divert back to its norm. But my guess is the Gleisberg cycle we're into at 5 years. We got 3, 4, 5 years to go yet.
Robert, one of the questions from the audience: owned land is the base for many farms for their stability and provides the ability to bridge the low-income years. What would you say that stability is worth for a producer? So we know investing in land right now is you're going to have to add money in to keep it alive. How do you value that stability, that land ownership component for a farm operation?
Well, it's like anything else. You have to do your homework and see where you get the biggest bang for your buck. If that investment is higher, like I said, in paying off for next year's inputs, that's what you do. But I think it is a great investment, absolutely, going forward, mainly because of the inflation and everything else that's coming down the pipe, and the rest of the. Geez, I'm losing my thought. My mind's going forward too much, and
you run too fast. So certainly equity, cash flow is going to continue to be important, and debt is still a tool, but a careful tool. I do have one more question over here.
Yeah, my name is Marjorie Mann. I work for RBC, but I'm not going to ask a banker question. We have an imminent U.S. election, and if we surmise that Trump gets elected, and he attacks the ethanol subsidy in the United States. What estimate do you have on land values that just is associated with that huge subsidy, and that'll deflate U.S. land prices, and will it roll over into Canada?
Well, it could affect Canada, but mostly if you lose your buyers out east or whoever you're exporting to. But don't forget that Trump started that war with China, where they for the exports and so on, where he limited them. And then, of course, China retaliated by cutting the exports, buying soybeans. They went to Brazil instead. But I don't think it'll affect Canada's prices. Don't forget their prices are, what are they, 20, 30,000 an acre? At least double, triple, quadruple ours. So how far would their prices have to go just to come even close to ours? I think farmland still, Canada especially, and how we're going to benefit from climate change, we won't be affected, I don't think, anywhere near. The only way we would be affected is if our export markets were closed.
I have many questions, but I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you all to help me thank Robert for an interesting conversation.
And I would like everyone to help me thank both John and Robert for the wonderful conversation. And on behalf of the organizing committee, I do have a small token of their appreciation.